The Last Starforger. Prologue. The Age of Dimming. In the twilight of the Third Age, when constellations began to fade and the gods no longer walked among mortals, there lived a solitary figure at the edge of the world, a Starforger named Kaelen. Long ago the heavens had been full of brilliant stars, each forged in the divine foundries of Etherium by beings of flame and metal. These stars lit the skies, held back the encroaching void, and whispered dreams to sleeping children. They were not merely lights, but sentient flames imbued with purpose, will, and ancient wisdom. Each star was a name, a story, a soul, but the divine forges had gone cold. One by one, the celestial artisans vanished in the great silence, leaving only fading embers behind. The heavens dimmed. Hope thinned like smoke in the wind, and mortals forgot the names of the stars. Only one forge remained, the forge of Tal, buried deep within the mountain, whose peak pierced the sky and touched the breath of the cosmos. Kaelen, its last keeper, was not born a god, nor trained by one. He was a child of ash and starlight, found as a babe on the obsidian steps of the forge during the final fall of the Starborn, swaddled in cinders and light. The forge took him in, as if it recognized him. He was raised not by hands, but by flame, by the lingering whispers of memory and the warmth of dying embers. His lullabies were the chimes of celestial tools and the hum of sleeping magic. He had no past, only the ringing of the hammer, the flicker of forge flame, and the hunger of the stars echoing in his bones. Kaelen lived in silence, save for the language of metal, fire, and wind. He tended to the forge with reverence, though its flame had long since slumbered. He spoke to the tools as if they were kin, and the walls of the forge echoed back with voices of fire. Each morning he would walk the hall of ember echoes, where the spirits of past Starforgers lingered in patterns of soot and light. He learned not through speech, but through spark. And yet in his heart he carried a strange knowledge, that his time would come. And it did. The last spark. When the last star in the northern sky flickered and dimmed, Kaelen stood atop the ancient stone of his ancestors and saw what others could not. The void crawling, slowly, across the tapestry of night. It was not death, but unmaking. The end of stories, the end of stars, the darkness behind all beginnings. Kaelen knew what he must do. He ascended the mountain's highest tower, a spire untouched by mortal feet for an age. There, within a nest of forgotten gears and sigils, he lit the beacon of calling, a fire that had not burned for 1,000 years. It was not fire in the ordinary sense, but a flame woven from memory, will, and sacrifice. Its smoke curled upward, not into the sky, but beyond it, through dimensions, across time, into the realm between realms where forgotten things slumbered and the old gods whispered. Its light peeled back the veils between worlds, calling to those who once forged fate. And they answered. From the corners of creation came beings of broken glory, a lion with wings of crystal and eyes of time, whose mane shimmered with constellations, a serpent coiled in moonlight and ruin, its scales reflecting shattered dreams, and a woman carved from dusk and thunder, her eyes storms, her voice the hush before lightning. They were eternals, the last fragments of divinity, remnants of once great pantheons. They had heard the beacon's call and returned from the void beyond gods. Kaelen stood before them, hammer in hand, his silhouette framed by the fading sky. His breath misted in the cold air, but his heart burned like the ancient flame. "I would forge one final star," he said, "a star to awaken the heavens and banish the darkness that comes." "The forge is dying," the lion growled, his voice layered with the echoes of 1,000 vanished kings. "You are mortal," hissed the serpent, slithering through air, her breath cold with time. "And the cost will be everything," whispered the dusk woman, eyes flickering with sorrow. Kaelen simply nodded. "Then I give everything." The divine gift. And so they gave their gifts. The lion gave his roar, a sound that could split stone, break silence, and stir the dead gods from their rest. The serpent gave a shard of time, 1 second stolen from eternity, a sliver sharp enough to pierce the veil between being and becoming. The woman gave her shadow, a piece of the first night, dark enough to shape light, a void from which true creation could be born. Kaelen fed them into the forge, and the mountain trembled. Fire, forgotten and sacred, roared to life upon the great anvil. Starlight bled from the sky, drawn toward the place where the last hope now stirred. Light pooled in the basin of the forge, swirling with color and memory, casting long shadows across the stone as ancient runes reawakened. The forging. For 9 days and nights, Kaelen labored. He sang the songs of the lost gods, tones not heard since the first age. He struck iron with thunder, folded flame into form, and tempered it with the breath of winds stolen from heaven. Each blow rang across the land, a heartbeat for the heavens. His hands bled gold, his eyes burned silver, his soul, once whole, unraveled thread by thread into the thing he shaped, willingly given. He moved with the grace of tradition, the resolve of sacrifice. He dreamed of the cosmos as he worked, of children laughing beneath skies ablaze with stars, of lovers finding each other by celestial light, of cities built around light instead of fear. Each image folded into the star like veins of truth. He dreamed of a child in the distant future who would look up in darkness and find the courage to go on, guided not by fate, but by choice, guided by his star, and in those dreams he saw the many paths the future could take, all branching from the light he now crafted. The star rises. On the 10th day he held it aloft. It was not like the stars of old. It pulsed not only with brilliance, but with memory, sorrow, and hope. It was a star of will, of sacrifice. It was alive. It sang not in words, but in feeling. And all who heard it wept. The light it gave was warm, not blinding, a light that welcomed rather than commanded, a light that listened. Then Kaelen collapsed. The mountain groaned, the forge shattered, swallowed by the earth. The Eternals faded into mist, their purpose fulfilled, their strength spent. Winds howled, the skies cracked, and for a moment all was still. But the star rose, not into the sky, but to the center of the world, beneath root and stone, beneath sea and flame. There it sang a song only the soul could hear. One by one, the old stars stirred from their long sleep, flickering back to life, drawn by the new heart, forged by mortal hands. Constellations rekindled. The night burned once more with wonder, legacy. Hope returned. Dreams found breath once more. A new age began. Temples were built not to gods, but to courage, to choice, to sacrifice. Children were taught of Kaelen, the mortal who gave everything not for glory, but for others to dream. And every year, on the night of his forging, people lit lanterns shaped like stars and let them rise into the sky, singing the song of flame and will. And to this day, when someone finds themselves lost in darkness and looks upward to seek their path, they are guided not by the stars of gods, but by the star of a mortal who gave everything to bring the sky back to life. His name may be forgotten by many, but his light remains. Steady, eternal, forged from the soul of a man who dared to dream in the dark. In the centuries following Kaelen's sacrifice, a legend blossomed across the 5 continents, spreading from mountaintop temples to ocean villages, from the mouths of wandering minstrels to the dreams of sleeping children. Though the true tale of Kaelen and the forging of the final star was safeguarded in sacred texts and sung in ancient chants by the keepers of the old ways, a companion legend, fluid and alive, grew among the people. It was carried by firelight, painted in murals, embroidered in sky-colored cloth, and passed from voice to voice, heart to heart. This legend became the soul of songs, the heart of festivals, and the breath of bedtime stories. It is said that the wind itself changes direction when his name is spoken in reverence, and stars seem to linger a moment longer when his tale is told. In land separated by oceans and ages, children learned to speak his name before they could count the stars. Elders sat in circles of light and shadow, tracing his story in sand, in smoke, and in song. There were melodies composed from the rhythm of the forge and dances choreographed to mimic his final blows upon the anvil. The legend became more than memory. It became a movement of the human soul. As the legend spread across borders and generations, new verses were added, each echoing a truth deeper than myth. From the mountain villages where flames never died to floating cities that charted starlight currents, People lit lanterns, forged charms, and whispered oaths in Kaelen's name. His tail became a compass, pointing inward as much as outward. He was not a god. He was something far rarer, a mortal who answered the call no god would. This is that legend, the child of cinders. They say a child was born from the breath of the last dying star, wrapped in smoke and ash, with eyes like molten silver and a heart forged in silence. His first cry cracked coal, his first breath warmed the cold stones of forgotten temples. The winds whispered his name before any tongue had spoken it, Kaelen, the Emberborn. The forge of Tal, ancient and slumbering, had waited countless centuries for this child. It was said the mountain itself sighed in relief when he arrived. Flames flickered when he cried, the tools sang when he reached for them, and in the quiet of night he would dream of stars yet unlit, skies waiting to be remembered, and songs no living bard had ever sung. Kaelen grew not as other children do. His lullabies were the hum of celestial gears and the quiet chanting of ember spirits. His friends were cinders that danced and echoes that responded when he spoke. In the deep halls of the forge, he learned to read the runes of fire, to speak with silence, and to wait. As he grew older, he began to feel the presence of something greater in the forge, a sleeping purpose, waiting for a time yet to come. He walked the ridges of the mountains at dawn, speaking to the wind. He listened for footsteps in empty corridors and watched the stars with an intensity that frightened the monks who occasionally wandered near the old paths. When he touched the iron left by the ancients, it glowed faintly. The mountain knew him, and he, in turn, knew the mountain. In time, Kaelen became more spirit than boy, his presence both grounding and ethereal. Birds would follow him, stones would shimmer when he stepped near. Fires kindled without spark. The forge, though long asleep, began to warm in his presence. The world itself began to hold its breath. Tales say that when he wept, ash fell from the sky like snow. When he laughed, sparks danced on mountaintops. In dreams, children saw a boy with a hammer and flame where his heart should be. They woke not afraid, but emboldened. Even then, the star remembered its maker. The cracking sky. Then came the night of the cracking sky. The northernmost star, known as Solir, the Watcher, dimmed and fell silent. Birds ceased to fly, waters trembled, crops withered, dreams faded into dust. The seas grew restless and strange. All across the world, sages, sky readers, and star weavers declared the end of the age. The people trembled. The priests whispered. The elders lit no fires. In cities of gold and stone, clocks stopped. In temples carved from crystal, prayers ceased mid-chant. Children cried in their sleep, dreaming of an endless dark. The world held its breath. Animals refused to stir. The moon did not rise. The wind curled inward and whispered secrets no one could hear. Panic spread like fire across the lands, and silence followed it like a shadow. But in a mountain wrapped in storm and mist, the child Kaelen stood tall. He did not cry. He did not fear. He walked to the cold forge, pressed his hand to the blackened anvil, and said, "It is time." And the ancient fires stirred. The fire beyond fire. Kaelen climbed the tower of flame, a place untouched since the gods fell silent, and lit the beacon of calling. They say the fire was not fire as mortals know it, but memory itself, a song from the first dawn, bound in flame and shaped by sacrifice. It shimmered in colors, unseen by the waking eye. It hummed, it mourned, it called. And three came. From the distant veils of creation emerged a lion whose mane was the night sky incarnate, his eyes deep with forgotten time. A serpent wrapped in the skins of fallen stars, trailing silence and silver dreams, and a woman whose limbs were woven from dusk and thunder, whose voice made clouds shiver. They came not to offer aid, but to test. They showed Kaelen riddles with no answers. They cloaked him in illusions. They tried to bend his spirit with visions of ruin and regret, of cities in flames and futures unmade. They tore at his resolve with promises of comfort and threats of eternal solitude. They conjured illusions of people he had never met, but felt he should have. They tried to unmake him with doubt. They built entire lives for him in seconds, showing him the path of peace. of family, of love. But Kaelen, the Emberborn, held firm. He did not kneel, he did not curse. He simply waited, eyes steady, heart silent. And the Eternals at last bowed. The gifts. The lion gave him a roar, the voice of kings, a sound that could rattle the bones of mountains and stir the sleeping gods from across the stars. The serpent gave him a second, a shard of time stolen from eternity, sharper than any blade, able to pierce the veil between what is and what could be. The woman gave him her shadow, the first night, the darkness that was before all light, the womb of creation itself. With these divine fragments, Kaelen descended into the soul of the forge. He lit fires that had slept for an age. He sang the secret names of the stars. He struck the anvil of memory until echoes of old thundered through the stone. For 9 days the mountain shook and glowed as if reborn. Rivers of molten starlight flowed from the peak. The sky swirled with embers. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He only forged. The flame of his soul bound to the shaping of the final light. On the 9th night, the forge began to weep molten tears. The spirits of ancient forgers gathered in silence, their ethereal forms reflecting Kaelen's light. And on the 10th day, as all fires dimmed and the final blow rang out like the ending of a prayer, the world fell silent, the star at the world's heart. They say Kaelen's body turned to ash, but his soul became light. The star he forged did not rise into the sky like the others. No, it sank deep into the heart of the world, beneath root and river, beneath the molten sea and sleeping stone. It settled in the place where all paths meet, the pulse of creation. This star has no name, yet holds every name whispered in the dark. It does not shine in the heavens, but in the hearts of the brave. It does not command, but gently calls. It is the fire in every lantern held by those who walk alone. It is the warmth in every choice, made not out of fear, but hope. Those who are lost, who feel they can go no farther, often feel a sudden lightness in their chest, a flicker, a pull. That is Kaelen's star, reminding them, you are not alone. And sometimes, when great acts of courage are done in silence, the ground trembles faintly, as if the forge remembers. In dreams, some say they see a red-cloaked figure walking among galaxies. In visions, others claim to hear the ringing of the anvil of memory. And in moments of sacrifice, the star at the world's heart glows brightest. Others believe that Kaelen still walks the earth unseen and eternal, a guide for those who dare to choose courage when it is hardest. They say that in the quiet before dawn, when the air holds its breath and the stars lean close, his presence can be felt, not in voice or form, but in resolve. The Festival of Lanterns. Each year, on the longest night, the night of stillness, the people of every land gather. On rooftops and hills, in temples and villages, they craft lanterns shaped like stars, weaving them from paper and prayer, dream thread and memory. They write upon them their fears, their wishes, their regrets, and their promises. Then, with quiet breath and reverent hands, they release them to the sky. Lanterns rise like a swarm of stars, and the people sing, to the star beneath our feet, forged by flame and will. Light our path, guide our dreams, burn ever still. Star. In some regions, families share the story of Kaelen around fires carved from star metal. In others, children reenact the forging using painted masks and wooden hammers. In mountain villages, echoes of hammers are played through cavern bells to mimic the forging. In sea-bound cities, lights are floated on the water instead of sky, symbolizing the star at the world's heart. In the northern forests, glowing moss is shaped into stars and hung from trees. In the southern deserts, fire dancers twirl in spirals, mimicking the flow of molten star metal. On snowy plains, families build snow forges and fill them with flickering candles. Each culture gives voice to the legend in its own way, but the heart remains the same. Elders say if you listen closely, you can hear the forge echo in the wind, the rhythmic beat of Kaelen's hammer ringing through time. Children are told that the bravest among them might hear his whisper, a soft hum beneath the stars, saying, "Be the light you seek." Kaelen lives not in temples of gold, but in every selfless act, every brave choice, every whispered dream that dares to burn. He was mortal, but his legend, his light is eternal.